On this show, we discuss mental health issues that affect members of our community, and we try to provide simple ways in which persons can look after their mental health and find out how to seek help and support when needed. Today's topic is looking at mental health issues that affect members of the LGBTQIA+ community, which is the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, intersex, and asexual population. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago and across the world, members of this community often face several unique challenges. In Trinidad and Tobago and across the world, members of this community often face discrimination and challenges based on wrong ideas and misconceptions, and also sometimes religious beliefs that other persons may hold. The first thing I would like to say is that it is really important to highlight that being a member of this community is not a mental illness. We are seeing trends where younger persons are feeling more open to describe themselves as belonging to this community, so that millennials are much more likely to identify as one of these persons rather than a person from Generation X or a boomer, for instance. And it is also important to remember that embracing your identity as a member of the LGBTQI community can also have a positive impact on your well-being. It can allow you to have increased confidence, improved relationships with your friends and family, a sense of community and belonging, freedom to express yourself and to accept yourself, and increased resilience. However, we know that sometimes it is not always as simple as this. A majority of persons of the LGBT community say that they or a friend or family member have been threatened or non-sexually harassed, or been sexually harassed, or experienced violence because of their sexuality or their gender identity. 38% of transgender persons say they have experienced slurs, and 28% have experienced insensitive or offensive comments because of their gender identity or sexual orientation. Of course, we know that anyone can experience a mental health problem, but those who identify as LGBT are more likely to develop problems such as low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, misuse of drugs or alcohol, self-harm or suicidal feelings, and homelessness. LGBT adults are more than twice as likely as heterosexual adults to experience a mental health condition, and transgender individuals are nearly 4 times as likely as cisgender individuals to experience a mental health condition. Of course, it is important to point out that just the mere fact that you are born or choose to identify with the LGBTQ community does not cause these problems. It is more complicated than that. And there are a lot of factors in society that affect this, including homophobia, transphobia, stigma, discrimination, difficult experiences when coming out to friends and family, feeling isolated, feeling rejected, problems with accessing mental health or other medical care, and uninformed persons conflating homosexuality with other illnesses such as pedophilia or bestiality. And of course, we must remember that being a member of the LGBT community is not that person's whole personality. They are also members of a particular race, religion, nationality, or a socioeconomic class. And all of these things have different factors in the stresses that they go through. In other countries, there has been legislation put in place to protect the rights of the LGBT community, such as the Equality Act of 2010 in the UK. And in the USA, there are provisions in the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act. In Trinidad, they are trying to make changes to the Equal Opportunity Act to cover sexual orientation. But this is a work in progress, excuse me. Let's talk a little bit about some self-care or things that you can do to improve your own mental health. Talk to someone you trust. access peer support, join an LGBTQI specific group, of course have a healthy diet, exercise, limit your substance use, volunteer, and look after your sexual health. In Trinidad, there are some support groups that persons can access. On Facebook, persons can search the South Trinidad LGBTQIA Facebook page, and there is Pride TT, which has a website at pridett.com. And both of these groups can serve as a means of reaching out, gaining information, and finding a community to interact with. In our next segment, we will be joined by two guests from CAISO, the coalition advocating for the inclusion of sexual orientation, and specifically from their Wholeness and Justice program. We will be joined by Ms. RAE ALIBEY, who is a community caseworker, and she has several years working with LGBT organizations, and she holds a bachelor's degree in psychology and is currently pursuing her master's. We will also be joined by Ms. Akilah Riley-Richardson, who is the clinical administrator, a clinical social worker, and a certified clinical trauma professional. They will be joining us to speak about issues which affect the LGBTQIA community in Trinidad and Tobago and what CAISO can do to help and what role they have been playing in advocating for members of this community. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back to continue our session. On this episode, I would like to consider the following thought, that when we stand up for our own rights, others see and they stand up with us. In our society, we are all unique and we all belong to several subgroups. And sometimes we feel that those subgroups are not being represented adequately or they are not receiving a fair share. We should all stand up and say what it is that we need, and we should all be supported. And we should also respect the rights of others who may not belong to our group. We may not agree about everything. We will not all like the same things. We will not all live the same way. But underlying everything, we are all human beings, and we all have to share this country and this world. So I would like to end off by saying that we should all respect each other and that we should all try to live in peace and harmony and support our fellow man in any way that we can. Thank you. Welcome back to this session of The Present Mind. I have with me today two very special guests, Ms. Akilah Riley-Richardson and Ms. RAE ALIBEY, and they are from CAISO. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm very happy to have you here. Why don't we dive straight in and you tell me a bit about CAISO. What is CAISO?
Well, thank you very much for having us here, Dr. Mahabir. CAISO is a feminist civil society organization that is committed to ensuring wholeness, justice, and inclusion for Trinidad and Tobago's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex persons. We do this through the development of analysis, building of alliances, and advocacy.
And how long has CAISO been in existence?
Well, CAISO has been around since 2009, so we have had some years well of doing this kind of advocacy work and being the face and the consistent voice for LGBTI issues within Trinidad and Tobago. As a matter of fact, our work has in measurable ways shifted the way people think, imagine, or even talk about sexualities and gender and sex itself.
That's wonderful. I know that you've been working really hard. Can you tell me a little bit about the projects, that perhaps about one or two projects that are dear to you that you were involved in?
Well, since our inception, we have done so many projects. One of them that has been ongoing for the last 10 years, I want to mention the Adult 3 campaign. For the more than 10 years, we have been asking for the inclusion of health conditions, LGBTI status, and age to the Equal Opportunity Act. We have had resounding and committed support from the Equal Opportunity Commission, but that is yet to be realized. And second, I would say that right now, CAISO has been delivering service through the Wholeness and Justice program, which attends to the inhuman violations or injustices to the community, and we assist them through legal and clinical services.
So that
Listen, the rest of, sorry, we have so many projects. They can all be seen on the CAISO-TT.org our webpage.
and we'll make sure to put up the address of the webpage so that so that our viewers can visit and see what CAISO has been doing. So I know earlier this year, Scotiabank, for instance, they extended health benefits to the partners of the employees who are in same-sex relationships. And that was seen as a big step forward locally for the acceptance of members of the LGBTQIA plus community. Do you have any specific thoughts about that?
Well, I would like to say that I think it's a step in the right direction. So I am, as you know, my name is Akilah Riley-Richardson, and I'm the clinical administrator of the Wholeness and Justice program. So my primary responsibility is supervising the clinical aspect and the mental health interventions that we do. And I think when I think about the ways in which discrimination, etc., affects people's sense of well-being and sense of inclusion, I think Scotiabank's direction is not only good in terms of the benefits it provides, the financial rewards, etc., but also just so that people can feel a true sense of inclusion, and it can improve their sense of well-being. So I think if we think about the physiological needs, I mean, surely it's a step in the right direction, but it's also great when we think about improving mental health and well-being.
I'm really glad that you brought up mental health. We know that members of the LGBTQIA community, they face many different challenges with their mental health. There's a greater incidence of depression. There's a greater incidence of self-harm. Can you tell me, are there any programs specifically that CAISO has reaching out to members of the community who might be suffering with these sort of issues?
Most definitely. And the nice thing about our work is that we don't only think about the community, but we think about the ways in which our community intersects with other marginalized communities. So, Rae in a little bit will talk about our Sign Together project. But under Wholeness and Justice, we have a mental health component, a therapeutic component. So when someone comes to us after experiencing some kind of violation, that person sees our lawyer, but they also, firstly, they would see Rae, right? And if there's complex trauma involved, that person would see me individually, all right? And I would use various methods to treat with the trauma. There was a point in time we also had a program called Moving for Mental Health, right? Where we would have exercise classes. And of course, I'm sure you are aware of the invaluable benefit of exercise to mental health. And so we saw it as an opportunity to help people to be able to alter their levels of serotonin and dopamine, etc., just naturally, We also have an ultimate care package, right? And part of this ultimate care package is that we provide persons who may need additional support to see persons who, like psychiatrists, right? We can provide support there as well, because as you know, some of our clients may not necessarily be responsive to just talk therapy or some of the other somatic therapies that I may use, etc. So we may have to, in those cases, refer. And once clients are eligible, we can support them in getting that kind of assistance within the realm of pharmacotherapy. Yeah, we also have the living room, which I know Rae is a big partner and a big player in. So of course, I'll invite Rae to share more about that. Before she shares about it, I'd like to say, from my understanding, the living room is an excellent opportunity to rely on the internal, how to put it, the principle of universalism and the internal expertise and the internal wisdom among community members. We actually find a way to metabolize that, to cherish that, to use that, so that community members can actually provide support to one another. So I want Rae to kind of share more on the community meetups, the living room, I think it is, as well as the other program we have, which is Sign Together.
Well, let me touch back just quickly on the Scotiabank healthcare policy. Just in July, we had launched the LGBTQIA plus workplace policy. So we have been recruited from our partners, and we have worked in alliance with the private sector as well as with other LGBTI NGOs, and to come up with this model for inclusion in the workplace. So definitely, Scotiabank is a step in the right direction, and we want to see more private sectors, companies following the same direction as well. Um, as for the living room, part of Wholeness and Justice is not just to deliver legal support or psychosocial support in our response to human rights violations, but also to encourage wholeness and development in the individual themselves. What we have found in our work over the past decade and counting is that when people have a stronger sense of self-esteem and inclusion, and they're not as marginalized or as broken, if you will, that they are more empowered to be self-advocates. And part of that is like having a living room. So we get together. It is not a space for allies, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. We get together like once a month. We're meeting this Saturday. The topic, I believe, is growing up gay. And we invite broadly for members of the community to come and join us at 7:30 until 9, and we just talk. And sometimes, even in our talk therapy, sometimes people are not really looking for solutions. They're not looking for healing. They just want to be heard. And we provide that space where they could be heard, where there could be empathy, and then where we can have mutual healing.
So that sounds like peer support, and peer support is very, very important. Now, Ray and Akilah, I know that you have to leave very soon. I just want to bring up one last issue before you leave me, all right? Trinidad and Tobago views itself as a very religious country, and that comes with good things and bad things. What would you say is the experience of your members and your allies when religious persons try to use their beliefs to look down on or to discriminate against your members in some way?
I will start by saying that there's a lot of hurt, deep hurt, deep pain, and a deep sense of what we call endurance trauma. So as you know, endurance trauma is this sense of feeling unsafe all of the time. And so when persons have to live in context or be in context with persons who may discriminate against them or victimize them using religion as a basis, there's a deep sense of hurt. But what we have been able to celebrate, though, is that this is not the case for every single person who subscribes to a particular religious belief. We do have allies amongst different religions, and we celebrate the fact that those people have welcomed the community in different ways and have sought in their own way to speak their truth and in different ways to be advocates as well. So, largely the experience, is not always positive, but we are hoping that as we do this work, as we continue the sensitization that CAISO does, that we would help to help religious communities to understand that members of the community are human, and that in no way should their humanity be devalued, and it is important to welcome them and treat them as such. But definitely, to answer your question, a great deal of hurt, a great deal of pain and anxiety as well. And I know in your field you'd appreciate the role that anxiety could play in terms of, just the impairments to the brain and the inability to function, to concentrate, to be present, and so we've seen how those things have manifested greatly for members of the community, the depression and the anxiety. And sometimes, trying to just find a way to survive daily just becomes so difficult because of the mental health challenges that present themselves as a result of this, of being on the receiving end of hatred and of just so much ill will.
So, sorry, go ahead.
I would also like to add to that. I think we also need to remember that within our community, we have people of faith as well, and we don't want to exclude them. So we encourage them to practice their faith. And what we try to do in situations where there are loggerheads with the religious ideologies that is being espoused by family members on their particular church, unfortunately, that creates a sense of duplicity with the person. So some of our work is in healing that as well, and at the same time allowing the person to expand their tenfolds, as it were, to allow themselves to be themselves within their religion. And I really think that I'm not too sure about this religiosity in Trinidad and Tobago. We almost live in contradiction, as it were. Let's think about the way we are. We live in contradiction. What is important really is to recognize our religious allies, encourage them to continue with the work and to come forward. And we could share the nation. There's enough room here in Trinidad and Tobago for all of us, regardless of our. We don't have to have the same values and beliefs to live together in peace.
So, Rae and Akilah, first of all, thank you very much for coming on the program. Please accept my apologies for the late start. I really am glad that we were able to do this session, and I hope in the future we can meet up again and speak some more.
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Maybe next time we could talk more about laws and legislation. We have our lawyer. We would encourage her to come on board as well. And maybe you could have both arms of the Wholeness and Justice system. We could have the clinical arm as Akilah and myself, and you could also have our lawyer, Danielle, as well. We look forward to
that would be great. Thank you very much to both of you. Take care. So that wraps it up for this session of The Present Mind. Thanks for joining me. Come and join me again for another session soon. I am Dr. Shivan Mahabir. Take care and keep well.